hit 2 big threes late, and Melo hit one. That was the game. That was really the game. There are 3 problems with the Lakers I saw last night. Now, 2 of them will not get in the way of the Lakers potentially winning this series. 2 of them won't. 1 will. So let's talk about the first thing I saw. Once again, Anthony Davis disappears in the fourth. This is who he is. He got no dog. He's great in the first 2-3 quarters, but his fourth quarter last night, minus 11. The graphic for our Fox Sports FS1 audience, he just disappears. Some of it's, I think a lot of it's psychology. Maybe he runs out of gas. But, I mean, now, the Lakers can still beat Portland with this because they beat the Clippers twice this year, and AD disappeared in those games. The Lakers were the number 1 seed in the West, and Anthony Davis disappeared in a lot of fourth quarter games this year. So the first problem, and it happened again last night, is not going to get in the way of L.A. beating Portland this series. The second problem, Lakers do not have a trustable and dependable third scorer. Again, they ended up number 1 in the West, not having one. Danny Green was awful, minus 20, couldn't hit shots. Kuzma, LeBron didn't trust Kuzma. You can see his body language. Again, this doesn't necessarily mean that the Lakers can't beat Portland. Okay. The third problem, and it's very rare. I see this every few years with LeBron. It's very infrequent, but I've seen it happen before. And this one, if you're a Laker fan, is a problem. It's very subtle. LeBron began overpassing last night. Everybody say, oh, his passing was great. This team does not have a dependable third scorer. LeBron needs to drop 34, not end up with 15 assists. Why is he overpassing? Because of Whiteside. Hassan Whiteside had 5 blocks, played very well. This is what Roy Hibbert did. Remember years ago when LeBron and that Miami team would face Indiana, and the games were way closer than they should have been. You're always like, how is D-Wade and LeBron and Bosh struggling with Indiana? Now, they would win the series, but they were difficult because Roy Hibbert would get in LeBron's head, and LeBron would start overpassing. This is a LeBron thing, and it doesn't happen very often. But this is why LeBron, when he plays with Kevin Love or Chris Bosh or Anthony Davis, would prefer those guys are out of the lane so that the guy guarding them, the big, doesn't block the rim. It doesn't happen a lot. And everybody last night was doing a victory lap on LeBron's passing. This team is not gifted offensively enough to win with LeBron being the best passer on the floor. They're going to win if he scores in this series because you can't trust Danny Green. You can't trust Kuzma. Rondo's coming back. He's not a shooter. This is a bunch of odd parts. It's a reality show in sneakers. So the first 2 will not get in the way of beating Portland. AD disappears in the fourth. He does all the time. And they don't have a trustable third scorer. I mean, they beat Portland earlier this year with those things. But LeBron, and it's subtle, and it doesn't happen very often. But a couple of things have happened throughout LeBron's career multiple times. He loses occasionally confidence in his jumper. Now, it doesn't happen much anymore. It did a lot in his first 10 years. So what would he do when that happened? He would score at the rim. It happens very infrequently now that he loses confidence in his jumper. But he's always liked the basket clear. He's always liked it clear. So if he loses confidence in his jumper, he can take the smaller defender, the slower defender, and score at the basket where he's all-time remarkable. But just keep your eye on this. If Hassan Whiteside, who's a lot better than Roy Hibbert, if he gets into LeBron's head in this series and LeBron becomes uber passer, super passer, best teammate ever, that's a problem because the Lakers are not deep enough or talented enough for LeBron to dominate and get 17 assists a night. He's got to drop 34 in this series at some point to clinch it because Portland's real. Milwaukee lost last night, and for the record, Chris Middleton was awful, but let's save that for later. One of the reasons that Patrick Mahomes is great, Russell Wilson's great. To me, those are the best 2 quarterbacks in the league. Lamar's not in that class yet. Play with the lead, play from behind, it doesn't matter. Tom Brady, play with the lead, play from behind, doesn't matter. Lamar Jackson's a way better quarterback with a lead than from behind at this point in his career. This goes for Giannis as a basketball player. Giannis with a lead is great. He's physically imposing. You don't get any cheap baskets. He plays his game. Giannis trailing is not the same player. He doesn't shoot threes. You need quick points. He doesn't get them for you. Last night, Giannis, no field goals, final 11 minutes. Mr. MVP, fourth quarter trailing, 3 points. Giannis trailing late in a game is not as dominant, imposing, or important as Giannis leading. And this is the Lamar Jackson thing. Now, nobody said Giannis in the fourth quarter was a terrible player. Nobody thinks Lamar's awful trailing. But when you watch Baltimore trailing and suddenly Lamar Jackson's running ability and run fakes, who cares? You got to throw the ball. You're down by 14. There's 7 minutes left. They're not as important. The Bucks this year were 9-16 when they trailed by double digits at any point in the game. They're not a comeback team, especially late. Can't trust Chris Middleton. Giannis doesn't shoot threes. And Malcolm Brogdon, oh, he's gone. Okay, so, and that's with Lamar in Baltimore. When you watched Patrick Mahomes this year trail in the playoffs, Houston 24-0. I watched that game. My only thing was, all right, let's just let this little run by Houston wear out. Give Patrick the ball. He's going to be fine. You didn't think that Super Bowl was over mid-fourth quarter, San Francisco controlling it. You don't think about leader trailing with Patrick Mahomes. It's not a thing. You don't think about that. By the way, Dame. Actually, I could make an argument that Patrick Mahomes and Damian Lillard are more dangerous trailing. Because when Dame's trailing, it's like, oh, he'll take any shot. Like even the slight restrictions, Terry Stotts, let's move the ball around. When you're just like, no, Dame hit threes, and he takes the brackets off. Like there's no restrictions. Dame's scarier. Steph Curry is scarier. Patrick Mahomes, he's playing within the guidelines. Now Patrick Mahomes trails 24-0. Andy Reid turns to him, just go be Magic. Mahomes and Dame are scarier trailing. Because now they're playing with a focus and intensity, and there are no restrictions. There's no coaching restrictions. Lamar Jackson trailing, his passer rating drops. His completion percentage was almost in the 50s. It's not quite the same. That's why, to me, Russell and Patrick are different level. Lamar may get there this year. But when I'm watching the Bucks trailing last night, and it's funny about this. I for years and years, I said this with Mike Tyson, the fighter. Mike was great when he was landing punches and he was leading a fight. But I watched Mike Tyson twice against Holyfield and once against Lennox Lewis when he was trailing by the fifth round.